Wham bam, here I am, back again. I decided to actually take a week break to do a bit more planning for the last arc in the Luna's Vision story that I'm kind of curating. Also, not completely curating. And like throughout me hyper focusing on making an outline for that entire arc, I almost forgot that I had one more video outline for this one. And it's probably one of the best ones to go ahead and end the Discovery arc with, because it also like kind of questionably transitions into the next arc, which is actually the trauma arc. Now that I'm looking at it, I think this was the video that I was supposed to have filmed before we moved. And it just got lost within the whole moving process in general. All that being said, hi, I'm your local internet friend, aka Toki, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about the dangers of playing the devil's advocate. Or very specifically, the dangers of forcing a child to constantly play devil's advocate. Now, for those who don't understand, because I ended up using this term with someone a long time ago, and I don't think they quite understood what the term actually meant. So to explain devil's advocate, it's basically like this person is, let's say this one person is trying to make their point, and while their point might be right, you might also know a bit of information about the other person's point of view. So you would end up kind of giving them that information. That would be classified as playing devil's advocate. Especially if that person is not there within the conversation to defend themselves in such a conversation or debate. Normally, we would just call that having some sort of empathy or sympathy for both parties. But empathy itself has been a word that has been used too often for my liking, that it starts to lose its actual meaning. And the main thing that I want to get across within that is just because it makes sense doesn't make it the right way, or doesn't mean it is the only way, which was something that I had to take a while to not just accept mentally, but accept within my nervous system. Because just because you understand that, just because you know that information, doesn't mean that you're able to implement that information within your life. And then implementation takes a lot of effort, especially if you have to stop, remind yourself of the information. It's an entire thing. And very specifically, when it comes to stuff like that, you do have to ask the main question you probably should stop to ask yourself, especially if it's one of those situations where someone's trying to give you advice solely based off of their experience, but they're not really where you are, so you have to go ahead and figure out like how to take their advice with a grain of salt. Is, even if the logic is sound, does it fit you? Now this happens to deal with pretty much everything. The thing that I wrote down specifically is societal rules only affect those who fight back. There was actually this video that I ended up finding somewhere on social media, where it was basically giving you a visual representation of how like monarchy control kind of works. And it's just a whole bunch of people and it's a whole bunch of people and this blade, and everyone ends up bowing just to make sure that they don't end up getting sliced by the blade. And then there ends up being that one person that decides to stand up, and they're immediately sliced in half. So it basically gives off that vibe of, if you're not falling in line, you will be picked out, or you will be the one that has to deal with a lot more issues. And one of the main things I've actually used to allow myself to continue to do what I feel is right, it's not that I think that I'm a special little snowflake that should be treated differently. It's literally just, I recognize that certain things don't really work for me for any reason, whether it's because it's a new generation, it's a like whatever industry or what have you has completely changed since when that piece of advice had actually worked, or just because my brain doesn't really work that way, and I have to find a way. I do have to go ahead and find a way to have allow my brain to get to the result that I want. But because of the way that it works, it's very complex of how I need to get there. I wrote this like about a good month or so ago, like a month and a half ago. I don't remember what I was supposed to be getting to here. Now, in my experience, I have found that I was either born, or I was, heavy quotations, raised to have to play devil's advocate, to think in ways different than the way I naturally do. The reason why I say born is because when I look at my birth chart, Gemini is in the second house is in Gemini, or it's the other way around. I don't remember, but it's basically I have this. It's either I have this natural ability, this natural talent to see from the other perspective, or I was practically, heavy quotations, raised or programmed, more so, to be able to see from the other side, the other person's point of view. But one of the other problems that I ended up having to deal with when I was younger was the fact that I had to constantly fight to exist the way that I naturally did, which was tiring, because it was always with an adult. This is going to end up being an entire like mini rant within this video, but I, as someone that has grown up constantly being the combative one, because I can feel that I'm not being treated fairly simply because I'm a child, I feel like adults themselves need to go ahead and like actually listen and take a moment to process what the child is saying, instead of just immediately thinking that the child is lying, or it doesn't really matter what the child is saying. I understand if they break rules and rules need to be followed, but I also feel like even within a court system, there's always allowance of the accused to, tell their side and have their stuff considered, at least. Or at least that's how the judicial system is supposed to work. I don't know. I'm not usually in a courtroom. So basically, having to go ahead and deal with that the entire time I was growing up led me to believe that I was just wrong in general. And I had to... I'm trying to figure out words. Hold on. But having to deal with all of that growing up led me to believe that I was just instantly wrong. Because do you really think that a person would end up having to deal with that much pushback when it comes to stuff like that, and the whole idea of the common denominator always being me and how differently I'm specifically looking at it than the other person, and maybe I'm just the one that's wrong because of the fact that it's always me being the common denominator. Then I had to go through the entire process of recognizing the fact that no, they just wanted you to follow their orders or to do as you were told. And you don't always do that, especially if you know if it's one of those that's not how I feel it should be done. My brain works completely differently, so I can't really do it that way. The thing will get done though. Or even, I don't think that it's my responsibility to take care of that. And just the concept of having to hear that from a child nonetheless just pisses adults off more, because even if I'm right, I shouldn't be quote unquote talking back, because that is seen as disrespectful. At the same time, they all believe that kids should just listen. Needless to say, I wasn't one of those. But it led me to be confused about what would be classified as true or right. As far as the right goes, I had to work on redirecting my brain to thinking of what would be classified as fair instead of right. Also because I've had to deal with the whole fear of not doing things properly, because anytime I ended up doing anything out of the right way to do it, I always ended up getting punishment, some sort of punishment that was way higher than it actually needed to have been, creating like a false sense of perfectionism. Must do it right, because if I don't do it right, I'm gonna get reprimanded for it. But there will always be those two specific things that stuck to me, that stuck in my head. Everyone else seems to think this way, so majority rules. Everyone is also relatively traumatized, and not everyone is working on having to go ahead and process through that trauma, emotionally, mentally, or even physically, because I'm just now getting into that part of it. But also, I don't think majority rules when you're neurodivergent. And then the second one, people tend to punish or shun the abnormal or the outcast, because most people hate being told that they're wrong, even if they are. I understand, it doesn't make you feel good, but I feel like it would be better if people were just honest. So that's one of the main reasons as to why I feel like the discovery arc in and of itself is very important. Not just to like figuring out how to maneuver through life, but very specifically figuring out things like what do you specifically believe in, and how to navigate mainly conflict, but any type of this person believes in something completely different than you, and how to navigate those situations. So for anyone who needs any type of advice specifically on how to do that, here's 3 things that I've at least used for myself, and it's mainly asking yourself, is it really for you? 1, figuring out who you are and how you mentally work. That was the most important thing within my journey here. Do the personal values and beliefs match? Sometimes it's, does it match the person? Do the personal values, morals, and beliefs match what the person is saying? Or is it like one of those weird discrepancies where you can hear one set of moral values within their words, but you can see a completely different set of moral values within their actions and honestly reactions, and you end up seeing that discrepancy? Leave it alone. Leave them alone. But also within you, do your words and actions match to your moral values, principles, personal beliefs, what have you? And then there's the third thing, expectation versus reality. You'd be surprised at how many people actually have a problem with this one. But this also goes within like how you plan how to do things or how to deal with things. What would be the expectation? Is it is it unrealistic? And what would be the reality of the situation or the reality of whatever the issue is? Like I would expect an adult that is older than me, that has literally been one of the ones to change my own diapers, to handle things better than I do, to handle dealing with conflict better than I do, handle people setting respectable boundaries better. But the reality of the situation is, sadly, that's not going to really happen. Now, I will be talking about like the very specifics on why going through that self-discovery journey is very important before you go through to heal or to process your emotions in my next video, which is supposed to start off the trauma arc. But I also thought that talking about my experience having to wield a double-edged sword and how learning how to wield a double-edged sword so I don't end up getting hurt, but I don't accidentally hurt someone else. And gladly, that is all I have for today's video. Today's video honestly it was about to like literally not be recorded. I practically started this week off not having it, which is the reason why I'm filming this on Tuesday instead of a Monday. And I almost just decided not to film today and just not film this week, probably push it back to next week. But because I'm having to deal with a lot of intrusive thought coming up, I think I needed something to keep my mind occupied. With all that being said, my name is Toki, aka your local internet friend, and I did not do the proper outro. Like, share it, subscribe, hit the notification to be notified of whenever I post. Please put any type of questions, comments, concerns, or ideas for future videos in the comments section down below. Toki, your local internet friend, out.